Coming up on 5 Minute News. Trump targets vote certification in late bid to block Biden. CDC begs Americans not to travel for Thanksgiving. And Mnuchin pulls plug on some pandemic lending programs. It's Friday, November 20. I'm Anthony Davis. President-elect Joe Biden's winning tally is approaching a record 80 million votes as Democratic bastions continue to count ballots. Biden has already set a record for the highest number of votes for a winning presidential candidate, and Donald Trump has also notched a high watermark of the most votes for a losing candidate. With more than 155 million votes counted and California and New York still counting, turnout stands at 65% of all eligible voters, the highest since 1908. Donald Trump and his allies are taking increasingly frantic steps to subvert the results of the 2020 election, including summoning state legislators to the White House as part of a long-shot bid to overturn Joe Biden's victory. Among other last-ditch tactics, personally calling local election officials who are trying to rescind their certification votes in Michigan, suggesting a legal challenge that Pennsylvania set aside the popular vote there, and pressuring county officials in Arizona to delay certifying vote tallies. Election law experts see it as the last dying gasps of the Trump campaign and say Biden is certain to walk into the Oval Office come January. But there is great concern that Trump's effort is doing real damage to public faith in the integrity of US elections. The increasingly desperate and erratic moves are not expected to change the outcome of the election, where Biden has clinched the 270 electoral college votes needed to win, including a second victory in Georgia after a recount. But the president's constant barrage of baseless claims, his work to personally sway local officials who certify votes, and his allies' refusal to admit he lost is likely to have a lasting negative impact on the country. Legions of his supporters don't believe he lost. Trump's allies have homed in on the way that the president's early lead in Michigan and some other states on election night slipped away as later votes came in, casting it as evidence of something nefarious. But a massive influx of mail-in ballots because of the coronavirus pandemic leans largely to Biden, who encouraged his supporters to vote by mail, and those votes were the last to be counted. So it appeared Trump had an edge when really he didn't. During a press conference in Wilmington, Delaware on Thursday, Biden said Americans are witnessing incredible irresponsibility. Incredibly damaging messages are being sent to the rest of the world about how democracy functions. I just think it's totally irresponsible. With the coronavirus surging out of control, the nation's top public health agency pleaded with Americans on Thursday not to travel for Thanksgiving and not to spend the holiday with people from outside their household. It was some of the firmest guidance yet from the government on curtailing traditional gatherings to fight the outbreak. The CDC issued recommendations just 1 week before Thanksgiving, at a time when diagnosed infections, hospitalizations, and deaths are skyrocketing across the country. In many areas, the healthcare system is being squeezed by a combination of sick patients filling up beds and medical workers falling ill themselves. The CDC is recommending that Thanksgiving hosts take added precautions. Gatherings should be outdoors if possible, with people keeping 6 feet apart and wearing masks, and just one person serving the food. Whether Americans heed the warning is another matter. The deadly comeback by the virus has been blamed in part on pandemic fatigue and lack of federal leadership, with the president and his surrogates refusing to wear masks or social distance. US Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said on Thursday that key pandemic lending programs at the Federal Reserve would expire on December 31st, putting the outgoing Trump administration at odds with the central bank, and potentially adding stress to the economy as President-elect Joe Biden organizes his administration. In a letter to Fed Chair Jerome Powell, Mnuchin said the $455 billion allocated to the Treasury under the CARES Act last spring, much of it set aside to support Fed lending to businesses, non-profits and local governments, should instead be available for Congress to reallocate. The announcement was not expected by Fed officials, who'd said this week that the programs should be extended, and told Mnuchin so immediately after his decision was made public. The announcement could signal potential trouble for the Biden administration. The programs, particularly the Main Street and local government lending programs, raise the prospect of trillions of dollars in central bank credit flooding into an economy that had been partially shut down in the spring because of the pandemic. The Trump team has prepared legally required transition memos describing policy challenges, but there are no discussions about actions they could take or pause. An official said their goal is to set so many fires that it would be hard for the Biden administration to put them all out. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.